The air on top of Calvary was heavy, not just with the metallic scent of blood and the dust raised by the mob, but with the weight of all the sins of the world. Dismas, his body tortured and his mind clouded by pain, felt it like a damp shroud, a condemnation not just of the body, but of the soul. The coarse, filthy planks of the cross scraped against his torn skin, and every movement was an agony that ripped through the flesh and fibers of his being. He looked to the other thief, called Gestas, and saw only hatred and terror in his eyes. They were the reflection of his own soul. His life, a road of darkness and violence, of theft and flight, of betrayals and fears, had brought him here, to the end of everything, without glory or redemption. Dismas couldn't remember a day when he hadn't been Dismas, the thief. It was an identity molded into him since childhood, in the narrow alleys of Jerusalem where hunger and despair were the only parents. He learned to lie before he learned to pray, to steal before he learned to love. His heart, he thought, was a stone covered in scars, insensitive to remorse and pity. But now, on that dying afternoon, with the sun plunging into a sea of orange and scarlet, the stone was cracking. The fear of death was not what consumed him, but the fear of what would come after. Nothingness, or a darkness even deeper than his life. Between the roars of the crowd and the cries of pain from Gestas, a silent and peaceful figure caught his attention. He was in the middle, between him and the other thief. It was the Nazarene, the Messiah of fools, the one who promised kingdoms of love and forgiveness. Dismas had heard him speak in the squares, his words like streams of light that were lost in the gutters of his soul. But he had ignored him, mocked him like all the other prophets. His law was that of the strongest, of the sword, of easy gold. The voice of that man was like a distant melody, beautiful and useless for such an ugly world. But now the Nazarene was silent. His head hung low, a crown of thorns embedded in his skull, and his body, torn by scourges and wounds, was a tapestry of suffering. He expected to see him fight, to hear his screams of rage and despair, the laments of a man who saw all his promises collapse in an ignominious death. But there was none of that. There was only silence, a silence that was more powerful than the screams of the crowd, more eloquent than the cries of Gestas. Dismas, unable to contain his curiosity, struggled to lift his head, the pain exploding in his neck. For the first time in his life, his attention was not focused on fear, flight, or pain. It was focused on the peace of a dying stranger. The Nazarene's eyes, even in the midst of the storm, seemed to hold an unfathomable calm, an ocean of tranquility that was not disturbed by the whip, the insults, the nails. And yet, there was suffering there. Not an angry suffering, but a deep and serene suffering, as if the pain of the flesh was only the visible part of an even greater pain, a pain he carried for everyone, even for Dismas. Gestas, the other thief, shouted, "If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us." It was the voice of despair and revolt, the voice of Dismas every day of his life. And Dismas, for a moment, felt the urge to join his voice to Gestas's, to spit in the face of that humiliated king. But the Nazarene's silence, the way he seemed to accept everything, stopped him. There was no imposter here. There was no madman. There was a strength that Dismas had never seen. And then the miracle happened. Dismas's heart of stone, which had cracked, completely crumbled. It was not the pain that broke it. It was not the fear. It was the sight of that man dying with love. It was the realization that the Nazarene was not dying for himself, but for all those who had condemned him, for all those who had betrayed him, and for Dismas, the thief. The tears, which he thought he would never shed again, welled up in his eyes and mixed with the dust and blood on his face. He could not live anymore. But maybe, just maybe, he could die in a different way.
Dismas turned his head as much as he could, ignoring the cry of pain that escaped his lips. He looked at Gestas and reprimanded him in a hoarse and trembling voice that barely seemed his own. "Do you not even fear God in your condemnation? We are punished justly, for we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." His words were an echo of his soul, a public confession, the first act of honesty in his life. And then Dismas turned to the Nazarene and looked him in the eyes. They were tired eyes, full of pain, but also full of an infinite light, a love that was not extinguished by hatred. In that moment, Dismas did not see a Messiah crowned with thorns, but a king who wore not a crown of gold, but of pain, a king who had no throne, but a cross, a king who did not rule a kingdom of earth, but a kingdom of souls. His voice, trembling with pain and penitence, found a strength he had never felt. He did not ask to be saved from death. He did not ask for the cross to be lightened. His request was deeper, more desperate, purer than anything he had ever imagined. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." It was not a demand. It was a plea. It was not a question of merit. It was a question of grace. He had nothing to offer but his confession and his last breath of hope. He did not ask for life, but for memory. His life had been a shadow. He asked for a place in the light, however small, just a corner in the memory of that king. Jesus' answer was not a sermon, not an exhortation. It was a river of grace, a balm for Dismas' tortured soul. The Nazarene, with a tremendous effort, moved his head and fixed his eyes on Dismas' tear-filled eyes, and his voice, hoarse and weak, but charged with all the authority of the universe, resonated on that hill of skulls. "Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." Dismas' world stopped. The noise of the crowd, the unbearable pain, the setting sun, everything disappeared. Only those words existed. "Today you will be with me in paradise." He, the thief, the murderer, the wretch, would not have to wait for a judgment, for a purgatory. He would not have to face the abyss of darkness he had always feared. Today, he would be with him in paradise. Not in a paradise of gold and jewels, but in the paradise that was the presence of that man. The physical pain did not disappear, but it lost its power. His body continued to be a source of agony, but his soul was free. It was as if death, his old companion of fear, had become a friend, a door, a portal to a light he had never thought he deserved. He was no longer Dismas, the thief, but Dismas, the redeemed. His story of theft and sin had ended, and a new story was beginning. As life drained from him, he felt a relief that surpassed any pleasure he had ever experienced. His mind, once a whirlwind of dirty and dark thoughts, was now a serene and crystal clear lake. His last moments were not of fear, but of hope. They were not of despair, but of gratitude. He who had never given anything to anyone had just received the greatest gift of all, eternal life. And all he had done to deserve it was to confess his sin, recognize his smallness, and have faith in that King who was dying beside him.
What does this story of redemption mean to you? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of faith, hope, and transformation.